My name is Amina Rahman, and I am 39 years old. I never thought I would have a story like this to tell, a story that would shatter my entire understanding of myself, my faith, and my salvation. For most of my life, I considered myself a devout Muslim. I prayed 5 times a day. I've worn the hijab since I was a girl. I taught the Quran to children every weekend and was a constant volunteer at the Islamic Center in Dearborn, where I was born and raised in the heart of America's largest Muslim community. I didn't drink. I avoided interest. I never missed a Ramadan fast. People in my community would call me a model Muslim woman, and if I'm being honest, I believed it too. I thought I was living right. I thought paradise was the just reward for a life of discipline and faithfulness, but the longer I lived in my religion, the more I felt something was missing. Despite all my prayers, I didn't feel God's closeness. Despite reading the Quran, my heart felt dry. Many nights I prayed, not out of a deep desire to meet Him, but because I was afraid of failing in my duty. I never told anyone that, because I was the serious one, and people like me, we aren't allowed to have weak faith. Worse, I started looking at others through the lens of comparison. I never said it out loud, but I would silently judge the girls who didn't wear a hijab, the people who came to the masjid irregularly, the part-time Muslim women who try to live an American life while holding onto their culture. They're just picking the easy parts of the faith, I'd think. But me, I'm living the whole thing. My heart was silently filled with that kind of pride. Once, during an interfaith dialogue at my workplace, a Christian colleague named Sarah said to me with genuine sincerity, "Amina, I truly admire your devotion, but have you ever felt God was truly close? Close like someone you actually know?" But on a March afternoon last year, an event occurred that turned everything I believed upside down. A sudden heart attack caused me to collapse in the parking lot of the masjid, and for the 3 minutes that my heart stopped beating, I experienced the unexplainable, a near-death experience that shook me to my soul. I saw what I never believed was real. I met the one I thought was just a prophet in a book, and I was shown why millions of people, just like me, people living in religion, are losing their souls. Without even knowing it, I'm sharing this not to scare you, but because I know that feeling, the feeling of believing you're okay, while your spirit is slowly dying every day. I'm telling this story so that your eyes might be opened, just as mine were, because the truth is, I had lived my entire life in the shadow of faith, without ever truly knowing God. It was a Friday afternoon, early March. The Michigan air was still cold, but the sun was beginning to hold a golden warmth, hinting at spring. I had just finished a long workday with a draining budget meeting and was rushing to the Islamic Center to prepare for my weekend Quran class. I remember stopping at a red light on Schaefer Road, my mind still racing with deadlines, volunteer duties, the kids in my class, and Sarah's question, replaying over and over in my head, "Have you ever felt God was truly close?" I sighed, shaking my head slightly as if to dismiss it. Don't let the words of an outsider shake you, I told myself, but honestly, I knew it wasn't about Sarah. It was something I had been silently feeling for a long time. When I got to the center, the parking lot was already crowded. I had just stepped out of my car when I felt a tightness spread across my chest and into my shoulder. My heart began to hammer erratically. I thought maybe it was from skipping lunch or just stress. Nothing serious. But a few seconds later, my vision blurred. The world seemed to recede from me. I grabbed onto my car's side mirror to steady myself, but my knees suddenly gave out, and then everything vanished. No sound, no light, no body. I didn't know I was dead. I just knew I had left the world, not metaphorically. It was as if I had been lifted out of my body, my soul stripped of all weight and physical form. I was floating, no forward, no backward, no time, no direction, just a thick, cold darkness. But it wasn't like the darkness of a room. It was alive, it felt Like an entity observing me, I saw no one. I heard nothing, but I could feel the presence of something infinitely greater than myself. A presence, a gaze that saw through everything, as if the deepest parts of me were being laid bare before it. I can't say how long I was there. It could have been a moment. It could have been a lifetime. But then, in the midst of that darkness, a single point of light appeared. At first, it was as small as a star, but this light wasn't just bright, it had feeling. A living peace radiated from it, making me forget I was even afraid. The light grew larger, and I realized I wasn't moving toward it. I was being drawn to it, like a child being embraced from a great distance. I had never seen anything so brilliant and pure. It wasn't physical light, it was a light that knew how to love, how to call a name, how to understand, and in that light, I saw a figure standing there. There were no clear features, no spoken language, but somehow, I knew it was Jesus. And what stunned me wasn't meeting him, but what happened inside my heart the moment I saw him. A profound recognition, as if I had known him for an eternity but had only just remembered. I don't know why I didn't panic. Perhaps it was because that light was blanketing my soul in a peace I had never known. Jesus looked at me and said nothing for the first moment, but I felt he knew me completely. Not just my exterior, not just my actions, but everything I had hidden. The pride, the comparison, the fear that my faith was just a performance. And then he spoke. His voice didn't enter my ears, but resounded from deep within my soul. Amina, there is something important I need to show you, something that you, and so many who live in faith, have chosen not to see. In that instant, the light around me vanished, and I found myself standing before a fiery abyss, a place where prayers no longer echoed, where souls who thought they were saved were now screaming in the flames of justice. The light disappeared, almost instantly, as if someone had snuffed it out with a snap of their fingers. In its place, I stood before a scene that surpassed any description from books or films. Before me was a colossal abyss, its surface fractured like the earth had been torn open. Pillars of fire erupted from the cracks like silent screams, glowing red but unlike any physical flame I had ever seen. The smoke was thick, and the smell of sulfur mixed with something else. The scent of decaying souls made me want to choke, even without a body. And then I heard them, the screams, the wails, the pleas, but with no hope echoing back. This wasn't ordinary physical pain. It was the pain of absolute abandonment, a total spiritual despair. And I knew every soul here felt they were not supposed to be here. I looked around, stunned, and then I began to recognize faces. An elderly woman I'd seen at the Islamic center, always packing food and praying long after the service. A young man who recited the Quran with such an emotional voice during Ramadan. A Pakistani man who stood next to my father every Jummah. I stammered, "Why are they here?" They were good people. They kept the faith. They feared God. Jesus stood beside me, his face full of compassion but without a trace of hesitation. He said, "They lived in religion, but their hearts never opened to me. They followed the rituals, but they refused to be humbled. They served to feel righteous, but they never truly repented." I trembled as I looked at him. A sharp pain pierced my heart, as if a part of my soul was being peeled away. I wasn't just seeing them, I was starting to see myself. I saw all the times I had felt proud for praying on time when others forgot. The times I was silent but inwardly looked down on my sisters for not wearing the hijab correctly. The times I donated money but secretly hoped to be recognized as a good Muslim woman. The times I saw young Arab American girls dancing in the street and thought to myself, how sad, they are not like me. Jesus pointed to a group of people engulfed in flames. They weren't being consumed, but they seemed to find no rest. Some were trying to build something, brick by brick, good deed by good deed, but it all just crumbled, meaningless, empty. They are trying to use their good works to escape judgment. Jesus said, but they do not understand. Salvation is never a reward for merit. It is a gift that can only be received by a humble heart. I wanted to cry, but I had no tears. I wanted to scream, but my throat was a soul. Wordless, I could only whisper one thing. My God, if they could fall into this, then so could I. And that was the moment I first felt true, holy fear. Not fear of hell, but fear of my own heart. I had lived a devout life, but not with a broken heart before the one I worshipped. I kept the law, but I had never truly let God keep me. Jesus turned, looking deep into me, and he said something I will never forget. Amina, faith can make you feel secure, but only surrender can make you saved. We continued to walk, if you could call it walking, along the edge of the churning, fiery chasm, but the deeper we went, the more I understood. This wasn't just a place of judgment, it was a mirror, reflecting the human soul in its rawest truth. We came to a place I can't name, where souls were surrounded by repeating images, like an endless film loop. A man sat on the ground, his face streaked with tears, watching himself stand in a mosque, reciting the Quran in a beautiful voice. At first, I thought he was being judged for insincerity, but Jesus said, he truly loved the Quran, but he began to love the sound of his own voice more than the meaning of the words. I fell silent, then I saw a woman in a traditional long dress, her face tear-stained, repeating over and over, I did everything for God. I taught the children, I cooked for the poor, I cleaned the restrooms every-eyed. But when Jesus pointed to her heart, I saw it clearly. She hadn't done those things out of love. She did them to feel better than others. She lived to prove her own worth through her works, Jesus said, but never allowed me to soften her heart. Next, we passed through an area thick with ash. The souls here weren't screaming or crying. They were just hunched over, consumed by an absolute isolation. Jesus said, this is the place for those who begged for forgiveness, but refused to forgive others. I saw an old woman with sorrowful eyes. She had been hurt by her daughter-in-law, and held a grudge her entire life. She prayed diligently, recited hundreds of prayers of repentance, but never let go of the bitterness in her heart. Then a man who had been cheated in business, he went to the mosque daily, but for 30 years never forgave the brother who betrayed him. Jesus looked at me and said, forgiveness is not an emotional choice. It is the condition for a healed heart. These people asked me to forgive them, but did not believe others were worthy of the same. I saw a Muslim cleric. I recognized his face. He was famous in the American Muslim community, a traveling speaker with hundreds of thousands of online followers. He was quoting hadith, the Quran, making sharp, logical arguments. But no one was listening. Jesus said, he knew much, but only to feel that he was right. He preached about humility, but in his heart, he despised those who didn't understand theology as well as he did. A horrifying realization dawned on me. Many of the souls here weren't criminals. They were good, decent people, once considered role models in their faith communities. But what killed them wasn't adultery, theft, or alcohol. It was the quiet, insidious pride, camouflaged by good works, religious knowledge, and the feeling of, I am living right. I thought of myself. I saw an image of me praying, but comparing the length of my sujud to the person next to me. I saw the times I advised others to read the scripture, but secretly thought, they probably don't understand it as deeply as I do. I saw the times I gave to charity, but hoped people would remember my name after the event. I saw myself in every person I had just pitied, and I couldn't stand anymore. I collapsed, with no strength left to maintain my tough exterior. I had no more excuses. I couldn't plead that I had done good things, because those very good things had become the foundation of my self-satisfaction. Jesus knelt beside me, not distant, not cold. He didn't say I was a failure. He just said one sentence. The very moment you realize you need mercy more than a reward, that is the moment your heart begins to live. And I cried. For the first time in my life, I wasn't praying to be accepted. I was just begging for the real God to come into my heart, to touch the deepest place, the place I had hidden from everyone, including myself. Just when I thought I couldn't bear another moment of that agony, Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. No scolding word, no contemptuous glance, only understanding, and something I had never truly known before: unconditional mercy. And then, the world around me began to change. The fire and the screams faded away, like mist dissolving in the morning sun. I was lifted up, not by my feet, but by a sense of lightness, as if every block of self-righteousness and pride was falling away from my soul. Before me, a realm of light burst forth like a sun larger than any universe I could have imagined. Yet it wasn't harsh. This light embraced me, as gentle as a mother's whisper, as if my heart had finally found its way home. I stood in a space vast beyond comprehension. But there were no tall buildings, no golden castles like in the stories. Only souls, shining with the very love they had for the one they worshipped. They wore no robes of piety. They had no titles. They were not better or worse than anyone else. And what astounded me most was this: I recognized no one. There were no famous online personalities, no religious leaders I used to follow, no faces the community called role models. The people here seemed ordinary. Some were old, some were young. They were clearly from different ethnicities and faiths. I turned to Jesus, utterly confused. He looked at me and smiled. They were not prominent in the world, but here, they are the great ones, because they lived with a humble heart, with love, and with the constant knowledge that nothing they had was earned by merit. They didn't need to be seen, because they were already seen by me. I saw an elderly woman with silver hair, in a simple cloth dress, singing a prayer in a language I didn't know, but her voice soothed my heart, like water in a desert. Jesus said, she lived in poverty, unrecognized by anyone, but she loved tirelessly. She prayed not to be blessed, but to know me more deeply each day. I saw a young man with dark skin, sitting quietly in a field of light, tending to another soul. Jesus said, he was misunderstood, he lived in loneliness, but he never despised anyone. He forgave his enemies and chose faithfulness over being prominent. Tears streamed down my face. I realized these were the people who truly knew God, not through ritual, not through knowledge, but through a real relationship, cultivated daily through surrender. Here, no one was comparing, no one was counting their good deeds, no one was wearing a mask of faith. They had nothing to prove to anyone, because they lived in the light of a single truth. God is everything, Jesus said to me. Amina, you have lived to do things right. Now I am inviting you to live to be transformed. He held out his hand. In that moment, I didn't just see the light, I saw myself being remade. No longer the self-righteous Amina. No longer the current teacher stressed by her duties. No longer the woman trying to prove she was more devout than others. I was just a soul, desperate to be loved and to love him in return. And as I reached out to touch his hand, the light dissolved into me. And then I woke up. I was lying in a stark white hospital room, a heart monitor beeping beside my ear. A nurse cried out because I had opened my eyes. The doctors later said I'd had a cardiac event for 3 minutes. Maybe a minor heart attack, maybe stress. They weren't sure. To them, it was a case of cerebral hypoxia. But I knew one thing for certain. What I saw was not a hallucination. It was more real than anything I had ever lived. I didn't leave Islam. I still pray. But now, I don't do it to be safe or to be right. I do it to truly know God every day, with a humble and thirsty heart, desperate to be changed. I no longer live to prove my faith. I live to be in faith, real, soft, and wholly His. From that day on, everything inside me changed, but not in a way that was obvious to outsiders. I still wear my hijab. I still teach the current class at the center. I still help distribute food on Fridays. But for the first time in nearly 40 years of religious life, I started asking myself, am I doing this to get closer to God, or to reassure myself that I am good enough? I began to be more silent in my prayers, not because I had nothing to say, but because I was learning how to listen. I no longer read the Quran to meet a page quota, but slowly, verse by verse, with a small prayer. God, don't let me just understand with my mind, let me understand with a broken heart. And I realized something strange. When I stopped trying to be a religious person, I started to become a real person with God. I'm not telling you this story to make you afraid. I don't believe faith should be built on fear, but I'm telling you this because I know there are so many people like me. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone you love, people who have lived their entire lives in a religion, but still feel that God is somewhere, very far away, people who follow the rituals, do the right things, keep the laws, but still feel empty after every prayer, people who have memorized the Bible, the Quran, the Hadith, but have never truly surrendered their hearts. I thought I was safe until I saw what God saw in me, and you might be just like me. You might be a good, diligent, devout person, but do you truly know Him and let Him know you? Not know about God, but live in Him? Not be saved because you did what was right, but be loved because you have truly surrendered and repented? If you feel my words touching you, don't push them away. Maybe this very moment is the greatest gift you have ever received. The chance to humble yourself, to start again, not with merit, but with truth. God is not asking you to be perfect. He is only asking, are you willing to let go of your pride so that I can truly enter? And I beg you, don't wait until you can't turn back, as I almost did. Turn back today. My name is Amina Rahman, and if my near-death story means anything, it is only this. Salvation is not found in how we live our religion, it is found in letting God truly transform us from the inside out. I am not perfect, but now I know. I have begun to truly live. There are afternoons now when I just sit by myself, watching the sunlight stream through my kitchen window. The light is the same as it always was, gentle, warm, but I am not the same. I no longer rush to count my prayer times, my good deeds. I just ask myself each morning, is my heart softer today than it was yesterday? Am I living as if God is truly here, closer than my own breath? I've started to give thanks for things I used to consider small. A sincere hug from a student, a tear that falls while reading scripture, a moment I paused to forgive, even when no one else knew. I realize now, not every soul needs a dramatic miracle. Sometimes all it needs is a call home, gentle enough not to be resisted, and powerful enough to awaken a soul that has fallen asleep inside its own shell of piety. This story might not change the world, but if it can touch one person, just one, and cause them to seek God with a broken heart instead of a list of achievements, then that is a miracle in itself.